You're tuned in to Around the Lens, the internet's only live streaming roundtable discussion podcast, featuring Zach Roberts, Ron Hamilton, Travis Keys, and your host, David J. Murphy. Welcome to Around the Lens, episode 173. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, Zach Roberts and Travis Keys. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
We'll start with you, Travis. Where were you last? I was going to say, where were you, Travis, last week?
So last week I was away shooting, and this week last week I was in St. Louis at Shutterfest. So I was representing there and for APA and doing some shooting, and it was fabulous. And this week I'm at Palm Springs Photo Festival, and we're here with APA, American Photographic Artists, and Sony is also here. So it's fabulous to be here with them. And I had a fun moment happen to us. I was sitting down, and a gentleman comes up to me and goes, "Travis Keys?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "I don't know this man. Oh, where do I know him from? Where do I know him from?" I'm like, all right. Let's search the archives. And he goes, "I can't believe a celebrity's here. I watch you on AtL." I'm like,
"Oh
what?"
my God.
It's like, I love you guys. I'm one of your subscribers and donators, and he's one of the donators that has donated to the show.
The 50-50 shot of who he is.
Hey, which of the two?
It's
Timothy not Ron,
Floyd.
So
it's Timothy Floyd.
Yeah, Timothy. Yeah, awesome.
And I got to talk with him and see his work and some of his portfolio work. He's actually a surgeon, and after 9/11, he went in and did some went over to the war in Iraq, and he had some photos that he did from over there. Had a wonderful conversation to him. So first, I want to say hi for coming up and watching us, and it was really nice to see your work and stuff like that. But it was really great to have someone come up and say hey, and especially it's great when it's in front of everyone else. Like, oh my God, and like who is it? What do you wait? You're on a podcast? Like everyone's like, who? Travis, you've grown. No, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
You? So
yeah, Timothy sent me some of his work.
We'll
have
to have him on and discuss it and do some stuff with him.
Absolutely, 100%.
Definitely an interesting story. Yeah,
that's cool. Did he ask for your autograph?
We took a picture together, did the social media thing, and yes, it was kind of fun. It was lovely.
Cool. Wow.
It's pretty crazy. Nice time talking with him. Yeah.
That's nice. Almost similar, kind of like that happened to you when you said you met some fans, right, Zach? Or you saw some people who knew
Northern
about the
Short
show?
Course?
Yeah.
Yes. There's a bunch of people that listen, and that always terrifies me.
They were at Shutterfest.
We're like, oh dear God, I'm sorry. What? I didn't offend you, did I? Did I say something about you?
Yeah,
I got to see them, and they were at Shutterville, and at the Shutterfest in St. Louis. So I get to spend some time with them there.
That's cool. It's pretty crazy to think people are actually listening to what you're saying.
Hey, so we're doing something right. We know someone's watching.
There you go. You just gotta be careful now because people are actually listening, right, Zach? So you got. What you been up to? What you been up to, Zach?
Just. All the bridges that I can burn have burned.
Yeah, pretty much.
I let them light my way, as I always say.
Most of our sponsorship agreements will never come to fruition, thanks to your thoughts on things. But
other than Nikon, come on, Nikon.
Hey, Nikon, yeah.
We'd have to kick us off the show, though. That's the problem. He couldn't talk about that.
No, well, yeah. We got to see who's got the better deal.
That's true. Hey, if you want to... my soul is, when it comes to camera gear, my soul
is for sale.
Very, very cheap.
It's available.
Yep. The only, outside of some random events that I've covered, the only thing I've covered is the working for comicbook.com. I covered the Detective Pokemon.
Detective Pikachu.
Pikachu.
Thanks. I only spent.
How dare you?
Down in Times Square. It was super fun. It was a quote unquote red carpet, but it was a yellow carpet.
Cool.
We didn't get to interview Ryan Reynolds, but we got to interview the directors and the producers and Patrick Wilson, who is not in the movie. But was there, and so we interviewed him anyway. And
why wouldn't he be?
Got to see Liev Schreiber grab a woman's ass, and that was interesting. I think so.
Can you be more specific?
They were friends. They were clearly friends. It was not a moment that we witnessed.
Not a Me Too moment.
On the red carpet, as far as we know. No. But that was weird.
Ryan Reynolds was there.
Yes, Ryan Reynolds was there. Yeah. He just did this is the way the red carpets work. It's like basically they have the photos, they hit the wire services, and then they go to Entertainment Weekly, and then basically they skip everybody else. Never mind, we have a traffic the same size as Entertainment Weekly now, but we're just a little website called comicbook.com. But anyway,
aren't you guys the third largest entertainment website on the internet or something?
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that true? Could you say comicbook.com again? You haven't said it quite enough times.
The funny thing is that well, I helped create the site basically from.
What site is that?
One of the other agencies. Now we're owned by CBS Interactive. So
wow.
So yeah.
Well, I want to encourage everyone to Pokemon go to our website aroundthelens.com.
Yeah.
And find out all our social media links, and you can also become a patron like Timothy Floyd, and get all of our content before we put it on to the regular website, which now we've had some content on there for a while. It'll go to the regular website here probably soon, so you'll get to see that here in the next day or so. But before I plug our website any longer, let me introduce our guest this week, returning panelist B.A. Van Sise.
Hello, how are you? I'll be your guest today for the first 17 hours of our podcast.
Yes, indeed. This is going to be the marathon podcast.
I'm ready. I've got my steak water. I am ready for this.
That's right, guys.
Hands on a hard body.
That's right. 24 hours of podcasting, all in an effort to raise funds for a very important charity.
He's a new chair.
I do, actually.
B.A., tell the audience a little about yourself for people who don't know you.
Sure. So I do a lot of things, I guess. I'm a photographer, a photojournalist, sometimes commercial photographer, often portraitist. The reason I've been dragooned into this today is to talk about something about museum methods, actually, because I've got a museum show coming up at the Center for Creative Photography out in Tucson, Arizona, opening the 31st day of this month, which I understand is in 25 days, because I have an art degree and it takes me that long to do math.
There's a big calendar in front of you. Don't you lie.
Ironically, this
it's so big
in 30 days. But anyway.
Well, BA, let's talk a little bit about this project you have going on. Kind of, again, what's the museum that it's going for?
It's the Center for Creative Photography, which is unfortunately it's a absolutely wonderful museum. It's one of the largest photography museums in the entire world. It's actually the way to phrase it is this: it's Ansel Adams' museum. So he created the foundation for it with his entire archive, and since then they've amassed the archives of a number of other early notable photographers. Edward Weston's there. Basically, everybody. I think they have Waluigi. Everybody who sort of existed in sort of not the golden, I guess, the silver era of photography is housed there. They mostly do long-term exhibitions of traditional photographers, both traditional, I mean, from the olden days. Mm-hmm. The exhibitions that just came down this week actually were long-term exhibitions of Ansel Adams, lesser-known works by him, and actually Avedon, who is also his entire archive is held there as well. So they're taking down Avedon and Ansel Adams to put up me, which is a heck of a thing to say. Luckily, it's free, so nobody gives their money back. But it's been a really interesting experience. It's because the work that they're putting up isn't bearing of the same gravitas perhaps we might talk about Ansel Adams or Avedon having. But they're partnered with the Arizona Poetry Center because the last actually almost 4 years now, I've been making conceptual portraits of American poets. Mm-hmm. And they saw this work, they wanted to do a show, and they said, hey, BA, do you want to do a 6-month solo exhibition at one of the largest photography museums in the world of something that you've been bleeding and sweating and going broke over for the last 4 years? And I said, well, I guess if I'm free that day, which I understand to be in 25 days, I'll see what I can do to come by. It's been a tremendous process. It's been actually really interesting because I had done museum exhibitions before, but this is sort of a different scale and it's very different working with a museum that specializes in photography and knows the history of it, knows the art and appreciates the art of it, as opposed to other experiences that I had where they were multidiscipline or museums that were not necessarily photography based but wanted to have photographic art for an exhibition or either permanent or temporary. So it's been a very, very different experience working with people who are just so incredibly deeply literate, really almost as literate as the Around the Lens podcast crew in talking about photography.
Yeah.
Are you dealing mainly with a curator there, or
there are several curators? There's one who is absolutely wonderful, named Becky Senf, who I work with primarily. So what actually happened was they sort of assigned her to work with me on it, and she did a really, really wonderful thing from the get-go. She knows more about photography than I or you or anyone on this podcast, or probably most of our listeners. Yeah. She literally spent the last decade writing a thesis about Ansel Adams.
Wow.
But she said, hey, I don't know squat about poetry. I think I'll go learn, which is a remarkable thing that I don't think most curators would have done. So she took the time. It was very important to me that the poetry be curated in a way that was intelligent and sort of intersectional as well. And she did a phenomenal job of sort of learning about the world of contemporary poetry, learning about what American poetry is and is doing, talking about what that means in terms of photography and visuals, talking about sort of how those two art forms, which are actually very similar in many ways in both function and in culture, how they've intersected over the years. Wow. She ended up pairing it so they're it's a wild thing to say, but they're complementing my work with a bunch of prints by Edward Weston that they managed to dig up.
Oh, wow.
Edward Weston did an illustrated version of Leaves of Grass in 1941. He had a very troubled relationship with the editor. He had one idea of what he wanted to do, and he made these. They're not as storytelling as Albert Frank's images are, but he crossed the nation looking to make sort of poignant and poetic images of what America was in 1941, coming out of a depression. And the editor said, "That's great. We sent you to go illustrate Leaves of Grass. What the hell is this?" And it was his last big work. It was one of his best big works, and nobody ever really saw it. And when they realized they were sitting on a bunch of goofy portraits by this guy in New York, me, who had been making portraits the last couple of years, they said, well, this is a good excuse to go and drag these semi-obscure Edward Weston prints we have lying around out and show them to the public and put them to use. And it's really cool. A wonderful thing because it's nice to see old work presented in new ways. I think I'm actually, if I'm honest, I'm way more interested to see what they do with the Edward Weston than to see what they do with me. Truth be told, I am.
Yeah. How involved are they in terms of, and you cooperating with them in terms of putting the prints up, displaying how they're going to be living with each other? Or is it mainly the curator telling you we want it this way, or they're asking you for certain framed, or how much input do you have on the way it's displayed?
They've been really good about it. So the display issue is frankly a total nightmare because of me. Because the prints are all different sizes. Some are color, some are black and white, which is horrific and a crime. And if they had me killed, they'd be right to do it. They're also all different sizes. Most of the prints are 16 by 24. There's a couple that are almost just a hair shy of 6 feet wide. So there's some that are fairly large. All of the prints are being displayed with the actual poems that the prints were paired with, which is the real curational difficulty. Some of them are very long, some of them are very short. Some of them are profane. Dealing with a museum that's fairly conservative and dealing with that. None of the images were truly, really sexy, but some of them were, again, not really sexual, but had a little more of that to it. So they had to make decisions about that as well. They came back to me and they said, what we're really interested in knowing about sort of what the relationships between these poets are, which is about as difficult a question as saying, hey, what are the relationships between, and this list of 100 photographers working in America today, where we all know each other. And we've all heard of each other, and we all have opinions about each other, and some folks work well and some folks don't, and those relationships are very complicated and often very dynamic, and don't always look like what you would think they are, and vice versa. For instance, someone might see me mercilessly teasing that feckless, checkmarked hack Zach Roberts and think that I dislike him, which is true, I do, except I don't actually. And the same thing is true in the poetry world, where there's these big dynamics where people compete for the same awards, run the same circles. have very strong senses of identity in the way that we do too. The way that there's sort of crises between, say, somebody who is a traditionally a still photographer versus a fine art photographer versus somebody who makes videos versus somebody who's a portraitist, etc., and what those sort of cultures can kind of look like, and then take all of those and say, oh, and then the fashion guys, and how they all feel, and it's complicated, and because there's also the ability that they have that we have to say, oh man, that work is gorgeous. I would never do that, but I kind of wish I did. Same thing. And so it's been interesting sort of trying to weave that network of what they all look like, along with sort of how the images came about, what my relationship with the poets was themselves, where my decision to put the poets in, my decision to pick this poem or that is involved. To make it all work and make sense in a way that, having been in photojournalism my whole life, most editors wouldn't. Yeah, most editors would say, this is the package to tell the story, and that's that. Thanks for these pictures, BA. Here's a 12 we're running. So they've been great about it, actually.
That's fabulous.
And with something like that, are they printing the photographs for you, or do you have to provide the prints?
They didn't. I provide the prints. So I had to do it. Well, I was doing it anyway. I did a series of 6 exhibition prints of everything. Prior to the... Oh, I guess I can talk about this. Prior to the CCP getting involved, the National Portrait Gallery Smithsonian had been talking with me about acquiring a bunch of these images.
Okay.
And so I was making edition prints anyway. So it just got to be, which was actually a very good thing, because once there were edition prints being made, no curator could ever come in and say, hey, can you do something different? No, they're edition prints, so it is what it is. Yeah. Which was actually very, very helpful, because I had to sort of make them to fit what the National Portrait Gallery's sort of quality requirements are, which are thankfully incredibly high. And all my prints were made by Tribeca Printworks. They cost a phenomenal, unspeakable amount of money. Just I could have bought a car. I could have bought several cars. But they're beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually really interesting just having this work and seeing it in a digital format. There's 70 prints going up in the CCP. 69 of the ones that are going up were shot digitally. 1 was shot on film. Seeing them once they're printed the proper way through someone else's eyes and seeing what they can sort of do with them, you do sort of get, not to keep sort of shanghaiing, if you pardon the expression, into the conversation, but you get what Ansel Adams had, where you have the negative, which is one thing, versus the print, which is very much a different one. Mm-hmm. And when you had competent printers doing it, it made the work so much better than it had been when it had sort of shuffled out of my possession. So, which was actually really great.
I mean, it's such an amazing thing when you have printers that that's a master art in itself, and it's something that what you can make and pull out of it. It's like a good film editor. You can take a lot of bad subject or good subject, and the way you wrap it into a story and then print it, and that's the same thing they're pulling out of shadows and details and using the right papers, and so the development process. It's so beyond me as an artist that I can only praise them and bow down to good printers and being done properly.
Well, there's also this sort of thing where, forgive me, I've spent much of my life around poets, and I think about things poetically, but we're all of just about the right age that we'll probably start in the darkroom. And there's that romance of it, of the feel of the paper, and you walk into the printer and you can smell the chemicals lounging around, and it's sort of like the smell of the mitt having a catch with your dad when you're a kid. And it's like, oh, I'm back in the darkroom and I'm 17 years old, which was a very recent time for me. And
someone needs to make a dark room like air freshener.
Oh my god, I might 10. I might 10 and pass out.
You're not supposed to get high on BA. You just smell them.
Just put red lights in everything, and burn. Make sure for the first once I left high school, once I left photo school, you have like bleach spots on your hands from. Well, maybe I used my hands more than I should have used the tongs, but yeah.
I actually so I started as a professional in 2001, and I was working in the darkroom. I was working during the day for a cruddy little New York newspaper that I'll not name, and then I was taking photo classes at Fordham University, and I had terrible reactions to the chemicals. The hypo would give me terrible rash. My hands would swell till I was like the Hulk,
my gosh,
paler, with an ashen complexion. And my photo teacher was a wonderful guy, and he saw my hands swell, turn red, turn white, look like they're going to fall off. And he said, "Listen, you need to do anything else but photography." And I said, "Professor Lawton, but the smell, it's so good. I want."
Oh my goodness! So you said you spent quite a bit of money on these prints. I mean, is this coming out of your own pocket? And if
comes out of my own pocket. So
wow,
there's
no grants or anything.
Ways it monetizes. I never had a grant for any of this. So I sold a partial edition of one of these sets, and then which was fine, did fine. I'm not in the red, which is with this project, which took 4 years to say. I did it for love. And thankfully, like many things we do for love, I found a way to sell it for money, and just how I paid for college. And so
the back when the back pages existed, that helped a lot more.
And our beloved village.
Oh, no, I know.
No. You stole my heart. But no. So the truth of it is this: I applied for several grants, and they said, "No, this is dumb. No." I did it all for the love and passion of it, and with the support of my suffering bank account, about 36 brides across North America, and who paid me to shoot their weddings, and then I ran off and just blew all the money on making this project, and then eventually selling a big portion of one of the editions of prints, and then also now the book is coming out. The book was actually sort of the game changer, because the book found a way to actually make it palatable and also make it mass market accessible. At the end of the day, what will most likely happen is that I'll do what most people who have museum shows do, and I'll move it over to a gallery show somewhere, and let the galleries deal with it as they see fit, which hopefully means that I'll get to stop eating ramen at the age of 36.
No, you'll just go to higher class ramen. That's all.
It's the finest ramen.
You'll get to put maybe like crack an egg in there.
Boil little eggs in it.
That's right.
I ordered my ramen directly from Tokyo. It's awesome.
Put a little Wagyu beef in it.
Say.
Actually, I'm not even kidding. There is a Tokyo box where you can order, and it sends you like a ramen box of all these different cool ramens. And like sometimes it's like, you get these freaky ones like pizza ramen and this ramen, but it's a box of like 15 ramens, and it's pretty awesome.
Cool.
I was just in Tokyo, and I should have thought of it. I could have brought back a whole bunch of them.
There you go. To share with all of us. You mentioned about the show. I was trying to think. I blanked on the question right now, but so again, it ties together your photography and as well as other photographers' work and poetry.
Mostly Edward Weston. Yeah.
Is it? You said so. It's different poems per picture. It's not like trying to sell like a narrative through the poetry, right?
There isn't. No, there's no continuous narrative, just because there's no continuous narrative from poet to poet.
Okay.
What I did was essentially is I would go down. I would decide that this poet was going to be included, for instance, and usually I would do that essentially through self-curation by other poets. So every poet I'd photograph, I would say, recommend me 2 others who you think I should feature, which actually ran into some really interesting issues of identity politics too, because people would sort of pick whatever most closely resembled them, and it would kind of stretch out that way. But I would then go to the New York Public Library, just raid the stacks for everything each of these individual poets had written, try and find something that either was interesting to me biographically, or autobiographically, I should say, interesting to me just in terms of the world we live in, or just seemed like it'd be an interesting visual riff. And then say, okay, I'm going to build out a concept, convince this poet that they should let me electrocute them, convince this poet that we should all get underwater, convince this poet we should do this thing or that thing, and most of it was done practically. And then with the idea of pairing the poem literally to act as the tombstone next to the actual print with the actual photograph itself, hoping the two would, in one way or another, complement each other.
So that's what they call that thing, the tombstone?
It's called a tombstone, yes.
Thank you
for letting me tell the story. I got to photograph a poet. They're called tombstones, and so what there's other names for them, but I've only ever heard them in the shows that I've ever done called tombstones. And I photographed very near the tail end of the series a wonderful poet who lives in Michigan, I believe it is, who was born in Iraq, and her English is functional, but not strong enough for poetry. So she writes most of her poetry originally in Arabic, and then works with the translator to bring it over appropriately into English. And I met her, and she came out to actually see me in New York and be photographed, and she was very concerned. And I'm not going to try and do an impression of her because it would seem racist, but she was very concerned about how the work would be shown, how the picture would show, and how the poem would be shown. And I said to her in exactly the way I just said to you, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a print. They're all 16 by 24. This will also be 16 by 24. And next to it, we're going to put the poem on your tombstone. And I watched this woman whose English is her second language, sort of like, I watched the gear turn. And the gear turned again, and there was a brief moment where she was clearly, sincerely worried that I might kill her on the spot. And hoping that some gallant New York copper would come marching out to save her. And then I had to explain the entire history of why it's called a tombstone. And I gave her a very long-winded, I could have done it in 2 words, but instead I used 60 responses to why it's called a tombstone, which was all bullshit because I had no idea, but I wanted to give her a good story for all her time. So I told her about this whole thing and the history of this thing and that thing, and she was greatly relieved to know that today was not the day of her murder, but with no more enlightened as to why it's called a tombstone.
Wow. Thought she would have said something like, Tombstone Pizza? I love that stuff. Yeah. Great.
That is a great story.
Do what I can.
So remind our audience where and when they can see that work.
They can go and see it in 2 different ways. The first is they can go to Tucson, Arizona, and a place I've never been, but hope is lovely.
I'm booking my ticket now.
You should actually.
Field trip.
So it's going to be May 31st, I believe, the day after Thanksgiving, so almost 6 months. And it's going to be at the Center for Creative Photography, which is located on Olive Street. Don't ask me anything more than that. In Tucson, Arizona. It is actually a wonderful museum. Even if you're not seeing my show, they do tremendous things. They have actually an exhibition coming up after mine too, called after New York City photo collector from the 70s called Light. They do really interesting things. They have classical things. They mix it up with contemporary stuff. They do a phenomenal job. If you don't want to go to Tucson, Arizona, just to see my work and what is wrong with you if you don't, you should also look at my book, which is coming out on September the 3rd, which is called Children of Grass. The main text is by me, the photographs are by me, the poems are by the poets themselves, and the foreword is by the absolutely wonderful, charming, and endearing Mary Louise Parker.
And will that book be sold on Amazon or like your website?
Amazon, on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. You can come to my house. I'll get some out of the trunk of the car. It's great.
Okay, great. Well, we'll put BA's address.
Yes,
BA's address in the show notes,
please.
Put in the
show notes. Yeah.
Send cash.
Yeah, my address is 133 Murphy Lane, South Korea, 11374.
Everybody can come out to my exhibition at my house in South Korea. If you can get there, I'll show you some of my work. And some of my most recent work that I shot was at the air show, the Thunder Over the Sound, the Keesler and Biloxi Air and Space Show. Thank you.
He's good at that. He's
that's why I get paid the big bucks.
And some aviation gin, right?
Are you trying to get a sponsorship there, Zach?
I'm trying to get Ryan Reynolds on the show.
Yeah.
Aviation gin.
And Coca-Cola? And I've got nothing. I've got a plant. That's what I've got. I'm drinking plant tonight.
I've got some flat tonic.
Ooh,
oh,
nice.
It goes
yum yum yum.
Aviation gin.
Sounds so good.
But I shot an air show, and I've shot the Blue Angels last year, the Thunderbirds this year, and so obviously one of the I guess benefits of being in the Air Force is sometimes you get to participate in an air show, or get to cover an air show, or in this air show I was partially responsible for essentially managing it and making sure that the PA portion of it.
Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You might want to start again. I think you just went through the Matrix.
Yeah, you did a little max headroom for the first 10 seconds of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But anyways, like I was saying, being part of the Air Force allows you to get sometimes access to the air shows, and obviously this air show that we had, I was partially responsible for planning and executing the public affairs portion of it. So that was a neat experience. But what I want to talk about a little bit tonight is photographing an air show. How do you photograph? How do you cover? How do you do visual journalism? Videotape an air show? And so I'll throw it over to, before I talk about my experience, I'll throw it over to any of our panelists this evening. So, have you went to an air show? How would you cover it? Did you have a good time? Would you cover another air show again? So any air show coverage?
I've only been to an air show. I've never shot at an air show, which is fabulous. Is in Rhinebeck, New York, they have the old aerodrome, which they do.
Which is fantastic.
And it's a wonderful, and every summer it's kind of a highlight to go there and do it. I got to see the Blue Angels once years and years ago, and I still remember to this day the precision of that flight. And it's just as an adult, I want to go see it again, and it amazes me that the precision of those flyers and what they can do in the air. It blows me away. So I've never actually shot one. Now I want to, now that I'm a photographer and it's on my radar. Not my wheelhouse, as they say, but it'll be a lot of fun, and maybe I could get the 400 or so 2.8 or something from Sony and go have some fun.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see how well the Sonys hold up in terms of tracking the aircraft while they're flying around.
I got to play with the new firmware update on the A9, and it's like cheating. I had moments where I was looking away from the rugby players, and I spun around and just hit the button, and I got shots. And it was honestly, it's like little elves and voodoo in there.
Well, if you're looking for an opportunity to go out to an air show, you can go out to Long Island. You go out to Jones Beach Park.
Jones Beach, sir.
Okay, all right, sorry. And they have the Thunderbirds are actually performing at Jones Beach Park. When is it?
Is that right?
BA?
It is May. You put them in a spot. It's May 22nd through 26th. I'm checking that mixer. So it's May 24th through 26th.
Okay.
It was funny. As I was on my way into Palm Springs, I was stopping by, of course, the dinosaurs, Mr. T-Rex's Big Adventure, with the huge dinosaurs on the side of the road. And there was a family there, and they had just come from the air show, or just recently, a couple of days ago, and they were telling me all about it and giving me all the rundown on this. And so I'm like, it's funny how this comes kind of full circle. That I run into a family that's just gushing, and I couldn't even get away from them. They didn't care about the dinosaurs. They just wanted to tell me about every air show, where to go see them, where the Thunderbirds were next, where this was next, and I'm like, oh, this is fabulous.
Yeah, they've got their priorities right from the sound of it.
Yep.
Well, there you go, Travis. You have no excuse not to go to the air show and photograph it, unless.
It's true.
You're going to be back in New York City by then, right?
I travel through Salton Sea tomorrow into Valley of Fire into Vegas, and then fly back, and then and after that I'm going to Sun River with Sony.
Cool.
Oh, keep them busy.
Yes.
How about you, Zach? You shoot any air shows in your life? Not a one.
I know I went to one as a child, but no, never really had any interest in it. Yeah.
Well, now you have an excuse to go to the Jones Beach Air Show.
And come see me.
Come see BA.
If I'm there, I'm there. I'm going with you guys.
That's to see you guys is more likely than why I would go to see the Thunderbirds or any of those things. So, yeah.
Don't you want to celebrate the military might that comes from?
I don't want to celebrate tens of thousands of dollars being burnt into the air minute by minute.
This Saturday.
That's not taxpayer funds. But yeah, no. I'm just
one senses that Zach is not a true believer.
Yeah, no. I'm shocked that you. I know that I've been hiding this for a long time.
Well, what it is I don't check comicbook.com enough. So I know.
Oh, way to bring it
My
around.
Political commentary on comicbook.com.
Sharp, very sharp.
The hard-hitting journalism after Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, 400 words, word hits. Yeah, can't have.
Oh, this is just too good.
Well, as soon as they send you out to the press junket for the new Top Gun movie, then you'll have your opportunity to shoot some airplanes.
I actually, comicbook.com, I actually did go to the NASA training center in, like the fake one, not, where they planned the moon landing. No. But down in, was it Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Mobile.
I have a flight suit and everything like that. I have a little certificate that I'm an astronaut.
He wears it to sleep every night.
He's actually lying. He just went to space camp.
I went to space camp. Thank you.
And guys, this
National
just
Geographic
in,
sent me there.
colleges around the country are now playing a drinking game. For every time he says comicbook.com, they have to drink.
For all the photo students in college today. So those 7 people, they are all lit right now. Let me tell
They
you.
are drunk.
Zach's going to be responsible for somebody's alcohol poisoning. I can call it now.
It's not the first time, Dave.
Photographers getting drunk in college. Yeah.
But, it's funny you mentioned the moon landing conspiracy theory, and I'm wondering, do flat earthers think that the moon is flat?
Oh my God! Did you watch that?
By
the way, I recommend checking out
the
that
documentary. Is amazing.
On Netflix.
I hear it's amazing.
It's really, really nice to the flat earthers.
Yeah,
really?
And really good.
I can't recommend it enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it's thoroughly kind of crazy and
I think
entertaining.
it's just Flat Earth, is it called? I don't remember, but yeah. It's very nice to them, and of course, me being me, I immediately noticed that one of them is most likely a white supremacist or a white nationalist. Because
thank God,
terrified. My little sister. How are we talking about Flat Earth right now? I don't know. This sort of thing doesn't happen on my comicbook.com podcast.
I just want to say I want all the flat earthers and all the anti-vaxxers to go to the edge of the earth if it is flat and then fall off of it. If you can do me that favor.
The Venn diagram of those two, though.
Yeah.
You mean the circle?
Yeah. Also, the same people that do, MLMs, multi-level marketing gimmicks. Also, yeah.
Yep. All right, where were we? We're talking about visual journalism. Air shows. BA, you've shot an air show, right? Come on. You've had to have shot an air show. If not, you're going to shoot the one in Jones Beach Park, right? If you have some time.
I've gone to the map, yeah.
What was sort of your techniques that you used to capture the event?
It's been different every time. I have shot it from the ground. I have shot it from the top of... They have a big... tower at Jones Beach, which is shaped like a pencil. The ability to see from up there with a branch, but I'll be able to do it from a boat. But the best time I actually did it was actually from one of the planes itself.
Wow!
I went flying with. So if you like Rhinebeck Aerodrome, there's another similar aerodrome out on Long Island called the Bayport Aerodrome, and I actually went flying with those cats a number of years ago. Because they were going to be, and they were very excited about it, and so they're going to be flying in the air show, and it was the wildest thing because we actually saw the Blue Angels basically doing donuts in the parking lot over Long Island, waiting for their set to start. They had gotten up into the air out of, I think, Republic, and they were just kind of just going around in circles. Meanwhile, we come tootling by in our 1932 Stearmans at a mile an hour, past the Blue Angels, wasting all of Zach Roberts' precious comicbooks.com tax money. And it was actually one of the most wonderful experiences. If you've never gotten a chance to shoot the Blue Angels at exactly the speed you'd want, going past them, it is in fact quite lovely.
How is your stomach going up on those planes?
Doesn't bother me at all. Actually, I've flown a bit over the years. Yeah, I was okay with it. I went flying last year, or I think maybe 2 years ago. I helped the mutual friend of many of us, C.S. Muncie, with a project he was doing with the same Bayport Aerodrome. I set it up for him. If he hears this, I hope he didn't say that, but it's true. And so we set it up, and we went flying, and they were hell-bent determined to try and get us to do loops and stuff, which would have been bad. I mean, it wouldn't have been so bad flying into my own vomit, but I don't think I would have enjoyed having all of my Nikon gear tumbling to the ground from 1,000 feet as I putt away from it.
That's actually, I was wondering, do they require you to like strap your camera in like better than just around your strap around the neck, or like do you like that's actually just something I've always wondered. Like,
okay,
I don't know. Have you done like jets or?
I've never done jets. I've done helicopters, and helicopters you have to strap in. The 97,000-year-old guys in the Bayport Aerodrome who all got out of World War I, ate dinosaur steaks, and then flew me around. They didn't care that much. If I had fallen out, I'm not sure they'd have noticed very well.
I know. When we were in we were in Big Sur, and I was shooting with Chris Burkhardt, and he was in one Cessna, and we were in another Cessna, and we were flying down Big Sur and kind of looping and finding each other in the clouds and like that. And that's when I found my stomach wasn't as rock solid as I wanted it to be, and I'm getting queasy. And before we lifted off, I see one of the guys tying a shoelace to the little window. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? And so I know when we're up at the thing, they pop the window open so that the shoelace is there, so you can pull it back closed. So I'm sitting with the camera out the window, and it's like, I'm like, and then my stomach, I'm like, whoa. I'm like sitting in the back seat, and the guy's like, "Do you see the other plane?" I'm looking. I'm like, "I don't see anything." I'm like trying to hold my camera, and we got some great shots, but I don't think aerial photography is for me. Drone photography, I'll be on the ground.
There you go. I got sick on a helicopter one time, but that was doing some wicked, weird maneuvers, spinning around and then dropping down. I've never been in a jet before, but I'd love to do one, ride in the back seat someday. Probably won't ever happen for me, but that's okay. But they did have a VR simulator. The Air Force has this trailer where they bring around this VR simulator all over the place. You should try it out when you're at the if you have that time while you're at the thing. BA, it's pretty crazy because that actually made me a little bit queasy. The way your head is moving around and you're moving the plane around and stuff like that. So that was pretty impressive. Overall, though, when I shot the air show and when I try and shoot air shows in general, I'm trying to look for those context shots because anybody with anybody can go out there and buy a 600 millimeter or one. These lenses now that go from like 150 to 600 millimeter. They're not that expensive, and they're able to shoot the air show up close and get all the same shots that anyone else can get. So I'm always trying to look for context shots, like trying to show the air show within the context of the environment that's being flown at. So, it was on a beach this year, so I was really hoping to get like some kids playing in the water while the airplanes were passing by, but I could just not get that exact shot I wanted. There were these two kids, they were playing in the water, they looked adorable, and it would have been awesome to get like some jets screaming by while they were doing their thing, but unfortunately, the timing did not work out. But I did get some nice shots of people on the beach and the aircraft going by. There's a great lighthouse in Biloxi, and I know we had one person who was, just situated right next to the lighthouse to try and get shots of the aircraft going by the lighthouse to kind of, get that, tie that to the location. But yeah, always looking for the location shot. But beyond that, again, just throwing on the longest zoom I have and trying to get as close as possible. I did put the GH5's constant focus capability to the test, and it held up pretty well. I was kind of surprised how well it tracked the objects. It only lost focus a couple times. Sony probably could have done a lot better than that camera, but
especially
it held
just
up.
with the new update, it's doing some special things nowadays.
Yeah, would have loved to have had the S1 or the S1R and see how their capabilities were, but again, didn't upgrade.
Yeah.
So
yeah. My GFX-R medium format would not do it well.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go and talk about some stuff that happened in the news this week. Leica put out a video. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can check it out. I think it's a pretty awesome video. Has a ton of great production value. It looks like they spent quite a pretty dollar on this thing to make it happen. And it features some pretty significant and memorable scenes from the world of our profession. Most notably, one of the most notable ones was we had the Tiananmen Square Tank Man photographer and photography event that happened, where again you had the photograph of the man staying in front of the tanks, shot by, of course, guest of the show Jeff Widener. Would love to have Jeff back on to talk about the commercial. But anyways, so again, this featured his story, how he was trying to evade the Chinese police and whatnot, and trying to get this photograph. And of course, the people in China didn't like this, and so they went to go complain to Leica. And Leica has a big market in China, and Leica was like, "Whoa! We had nothing to do with this ad, even though it has our logo in the end of it." And I'm thinking to myself, you're really trying to step away from this one, this highly produced, probably very expensive commercial. Yeah, it was totally done by some kids. Some kids grabbed their camera, hired actors, and went to multiple locations. Totally just some rogue people. But what do you guys all make of this situation? No one has anything to say.
I mean, I don't feel that I can comment on it particularly. I mean, it's possible. It seems like a pretty big oversight. It's amazing to me that at no point did anybody at what I assume is Leica Legal, which must exist and be a thing, that nobody stepped in and said, we should just check on this incredibly simple fact.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the only thing I can think of is that Leica wasn't trying to say, in the commercial, like, hey, we were responsible for these events. Like, it was our cameras that were responsible for it. I think they were maybe trying to emphasize and highlight photography in general as sort of like moments in photography, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know if the other scenes in that commercial were shot with Leicas, and then, again, for some reason, the people behind this one didn't notice that this camera was not they didn't know what camera this was shot on. They could have just called Jeff and asked him, can see him. He's available. But I mean, again, does this have any impact on your sort of appreciation for Leica as a camera company? Are we all now against Leica because they did this?
Yeah, no.
No.
This is the reason why I'm not going to get a Leica ever. Really, not the cost or anything else. This is the reason.
Yep.
I'm just putting my foot down.
I finally have a good excuse to say why I'm not getting a Leica.
Yeah, it's a principle thing.
Guys, I say we boycott Leica. Are we on board boycotting Leica?
Well,
we have James
I guarantee you I will not have a Leica right now.
There you go. It's working.
I mean, I have a relationship with Nikon, so I just have to say, of course it was shot with a Nikon.
I'm also pretty sure that this is one of those, they keep talking around it in every article that I've read about this thing, that it was one of those things where an ad agency created something on spec or just created something.
No way.
Really? You don't think so?
Nope.
Yeah, I just can't.
Well, that's a narrative they're trying to portray, but I don't agree.
I can't imagine that something this ridiculous, because I mean, like anybody who you're selling this stuff to knows that I just feel like, even beyond knowing the photographer and being on the show for this, like I knew that it was on a Nikon, and I knew it wasn't on a Leica, and it just seems weird that they would have made a real life event as opposed to something you can do with this like this. I mean, never mind, the ad's gorgeous and I love the ad, it taking out reality and everything like that. Right. But it's the fact that like I want a movie made by whoever shot this, because it actually makes it actually looks better than like the Bang Bang Club did, like, which was a great book but a terrible movie. But it's one of those things where it's just like, I just don't know who they're trying to sell this to. If it's a known fake, like, how are you getting away with this? Never mind how are you getting away with this, but it's just like, just come up with like a fake event that you're shooting, an African warlord and in something or whatever, and that's the advertisement of like how important this is. If you can't come up with it, I mean, never mind. It's also ridiculous that you can't use one of the 50,000 photos that actually were shot on a Leica. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing.
That's the thing. It's
not like it's a Panasonic or something like that, where no offense to it, they're new.
Same thing with Sony.
No, but I mean, even there, it's like it's one of the three major brands that people that win Pulitzers and win big awards use. Like it's Canon, Nikon, and Leica are the three, probably have 95% of the Pulitzers and World Press photos of the last, however many decades. And so it seems weird that they would have been like, you know what, let's use that one instance.
I'm surprised they couldn't find another meaningful, like, historical
shot
event.
On an Instax.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to.
Shot with a Polaroid.
I've worked around advertising a little bit over the years, so there's two things at play here. Number one, Leica saying they didn't know about it is crazy. Mm-hmm. It was produced by a regional. It was produced by a regional agency for Sise and Saatchi, one of the biggest advertising firms in the world. These are ragamuffin kids who are just trying to impress somebody.
Yeah.
But what was really at play here, it's almost certainly not Leica's mistake. Yeah. It's almost certainly whoever did the storyboarding, whoever did the actual pitch, whoever put together the ad agency, and they're not Leica or Nikon or anything people. They're Saatchi people. And I would be inclined to think it was an honest mistake. That at some point somebody should have said, "Hey, we should just check." The mistake was, "Hey, we should check this." But I don't think that. I do think that Leica had nothing to do with it in the sense of I don't think Leica went before and said, "Hey, let's try and con everyone to thinking."
Let's take this moment. Let's take this moment.
BA is being somebody who's worked for an ad agency. Maybe you can kind of shine some light on these instances you see all the time where like ads get out there that are like unintentionally racist or unintentionally sexist or, like how do these ads get from people's minds to the page that wherein, the company represented has to apologize for them. Like remember that photograph ad that, featured the guy the white guy standing in a room full of the photoshopped or the photocopied, African-American runner at the starting gate. It's like, again, everybody was like, oh, that's racist, Have something like that get made. And BA is...
They have a frozen moment.
Not with us at the moment.
But there's... I'm not?
Say You're back. We lost you for a second.
I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back. I hope you enjoy it, yeah. So what I was about to say was that there's times when that happens because of oversight. Humans make human errors. What looks scandalous to one person doesn't to another, etc. But sometimes it happens and it's very intentional. There's just no way around that. Because as we've learned very well in our current political era, all press is kind of good press. And the attention you get from making a mistake and a fake apology is sometimes actually exactly what you want.
Yep.
So I think it's a mixture of both. There certainly are real mistakes, and those happen. That's a very natural thing. We live in a world of natural human biases. We live in a world of natural human mistakes. Humans are defined by our mistakes. But, there's other times when you just want to get that attention in a way you can.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's go on to our next topic. This is actually something I thought was funny, and I thought I might as well bring it up. Back over and all the way back in Around the Lens episode 40, we had a panelist by the name of Melissa Golden, and during that conversation, she brought up the idea of vertical TVs. Like again, you'd go out and you buy a TV because now everything you look at vertical video, vertical Instagram, everything's vertical, especially on your phone. And that at some point in the future, you could buy a vertical TV. And at that point, I was like, never in a million years would that happen. And then, of course, I read this story that Samsung is now coming out with a vertical TV for viewing Instagram. So this 43-inch TV is for the millennial generation. So you can browse your Instagram feed. It's called the Sero, which translates to the vertical in Korean. I should probably know that since I'm going to Korea.
Very clever.
It is. This thing will cost, I think, $1,630. I will say, though, it does rotate. So you don't have to look at it in vertical. You can't look at it.
They've been making those for years. They're called monitors.
Yeah, I have a monitor like freaking 10 years old that could rotate. It was great.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean they used to make these for like spreadsheets
for layouts
and like layout.
Layouts
So I mean, it's not necessarily surprising that this exists. It's surprising that they're promoting it with Instagram, which as the vile comment.
I think the main problem. Go for sorry.
I was talking about like Instagram is what tops what you can be. I'm reading a comment here because I don't know this offhand, but pulled from the API, which is 1080 by 1350 pixels. And I mean, it's just like I don't upload anything to Instagram with a higher res than I think 600 or 800. And so I don't know. Like I view Instagram on my iPad, it looks like complete garbage.
Well, here's I think this kind of the stupidity and what you have a generation that is no longer really buying TVs. They're consuming all their media on their phone, and someone at Samsung is like, we're just not selling these TVs. And I know all these millennials, they love their stories. They're watching these things. They're like, why don't we make a TV that they'll buy? They're not going to buy it. It's going to be a flop like 3D. It's just like somebody in the marketing department thought it was a good idea, and it's just not. It's
so.
Not.
I mean, I think this comes down to the marketing idea, though, is that this is something we're talking about, and this is something that, like, the fact that whether this actually will ever see this outside of a Samsung store in Korea is highly doubtful to me, because I mean there's so many of those televisions where it's like the 98-inch, plasma gold plated, it's going to come out, it's $72,000, and you'll be able to view 32K video on, and yeah, that's great. I mean, some guy in Dubai has it, and that's it. Like maybe, like they have the test.
I was invited to Dugall Studios and at the Naval Yards in New York City, and they were opening up their photo studio and showing it. But I went into their experimental lab, and they have they're kind of pioneering into their displays and what they're doing. They had a dual-sided OLED TV, and obviously a lot of marketing for whether it be a huge Gucci or something like that, but it was so thin and the blacks were so black and it was so crisp. I'm like, I want it. It was so beautiful, and like you just sat there drooling, and it's so. I mean, I think there's a place for him, but it's not the person that's going to watch Insta stories.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I admit I have a bias against these things. I hate smartphones. This is my phone. That is it. But there's another sort of, I think, deeper.
Oh, you have one of those new fancy folding phones, I see.
The reason why people like the Instagram, the smartphones, whatever it is it fulfills a certain addiction.
Yeah.
No addiction has ever sold better by being less portable. Hookahs don't sell better than cigarettes. Nobody wants the heroin that's tethered to the wall. Why do they think that people are going to be in a rush to go and get a bigger Instagram machine they can't carry around with them on the subway and everywhere else? Because you can sit on your couch.
Everybody want to come to my house and watch some Insta stories? Yeah.
Wait, is this even touchscreen? I don't see anything about it being touchscreen, which, like, I find it ridiculous. This laptop, the thing that started, is touchscreen. It doesn't fold over, so it doesn't become a thing. I don't get it. Same thing with my Microsoft Surface laptop, which I love, but it doesn't fold over. It doesn't become like an iPad, or it doesn't become a tablet. So it's completely freaking useless, because every time I touch the screen, it bends backwards. And so though on the other hand, it is sometimes nice, like, to have, like, I have played with the large iPad Pro things, and you open up Lightroom or something like that, and it's fun to play with it, at least for a moment, and then you realize this is totally unpractical to do any actual photo editing beyond, like, levels up and down on, or at least with your fingers. I mean, maybe with a touchscreen thing, but if this isn't at least touchscreen,
it syncs with your phone. You still have to have the phone, so you're sitting on your couch looking at your phone, but you're just sitting on a bigger screen behind it.
Yeah,
your Chromecast thing.
See, that's where I see this thing failing.
You know what this is? Is it's literally because there's always this talk about Apple coming out with a TV, and this is them doing something before Apple, and that's it.
That's it.
Didn't they just win like $5 billion against Apple for a trademark lawsuit? So I mean, like,
it's always going back and forth with those two.
But either way, it's a overpriced 43-inch screen television that has. I mean, the other thing too is that, I'm sorry, this $200 Vizio thing right here. You know what I can do with that? I can put it on its side and mount it on a wall and have a bracket. So it's literally, I don't even get why, other than to get a Petapixel article and get all these other electronics websites that are going to talk about it. That's why they got a bunch of mentions. And
honestly, if it was April 1st, you would be, oh, okay, I understand this.
You really like April 1st one though too.
It's like, wait, we released this on the wrong day. This is supposed to be earmarked for April 1st of this.
Well, vertical displays are great for looking at web pages. So there you go. There's another use for it. I wouldn't get it myself personally, and I think the reason it'll fail isn't because of anything we've said specifically, but I think what you touched on is that millennials look at Instagram on their phone while they're watching something else on the TV. That's how they receive content, ingest content.
How can I not pay attention to whatever Netflix TV show I'm watching on my phone, or when it's taken over the TV when I'm supposed to be looking at my phone? Yeah.
I see it all the time. My wife is constantly browsing Facebook while we're watching. My wife is constantly browsing Facebook while we're supposed to be watching Game of Thrones. And
those millennials. I'm actually
yeah, kids these days.
I'm guilty of it too. Right now. We're all guilty of it.
Kids.
I mean, the prevalence and ease of access to getting content like through Netflix, you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want. It sort of takes away from the need to focus your attention on it fully. Because if you miss something, you just rewind and watch it again. Whereas, live TV is live TV. You had to be there to enjoy it and absorb it. And plus, we didn't have those little handheld devices back in the day.
I mean, beyond all of this, is the biggest problem ends up being the fact that the quality isn't there. Everything that's created for Instagram and social media is downgraded to such a terrible level that obviously, yes, you can shoot gorgeous video with an iPhone and everything like that under the right circumstances. But, 99% of, even the most gorgeous stuff you watch on YouTube, if you try to pop it up to a bigger screen, especially YouTube personalities and things like that, it's not amazing quality. And so especially when you're watching 4K Netflix or whatever on your screen and things like that compared to what you normally see on television, it doesn't work. I can't watch even if you try to mirror stuff and mirror stuff from your phone or whatever to thing, it's just it looks like garbage, especially when it's through a crappy cell phone connection sometimes and things like that. And even on Wi-Fi, it's watching Instagram stories or stuff on Facebook, it looks like crap. So and I guess until we have Huawei or whatever it is, 5G network, Huawei, 5G network infiltrating our entire military system, but giving us 5G service.
As Dave and I just wave our heads side to side. Now, Zach,
yes.
There's something we touched on. It's true that you're looking at Instagram, most social platforms, most of the truly quality content provided by professional content creators who are providing the high quality stuff, who are doing what I know I do, and I'm pretty sure you do, which is purposely downgrading the quality of it to avoid against copyright infringement. So you're still making that bigger if it's at a resolution of 1 or whatever. It's not going to make it any better, and you're going to be losing out on professional content. I mean, maybe you'll be able to watch the video of all these great Leica photographers in China back in the day, but otherwise you're not going to be able to see much at all.
I mean, all I can think of is for my work, having a television like this. Oh, so I get to watch the most recent vertically shot police beating video or shooting happen on a large 43-inch screen now. Fantastic.
Well, I tell you what, I will
all 75 individual pixels.
You're going to tell me you haven't watched some of the goes, look, was that a gun or wasn't that a gun? You're trying to blow up, now you can finally see on the ground.
The top is wrong, so
Well, I will definitely invest in the vertical TV as soon as I hit 8K. That way I can watch my vertical 8K video shot with my Red Magic 3 on it. Which brings us to our next topic this evening.
More smooth segue material.
He's so good.
The Red Magic 3 is the first smartphone, as far as I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, the company is called Nubia. It's China. Of course, China. It's making the Red Magic 3. It's has a 48 megapixel camera that can shoot 8K video. So it has a cooling fan inside of it, I guess, to be able to process this super duper high end video recording. And the first thing I thought when I heard about this was, oh, that's cool. This is going to be the worst quality 8K video in the world. Yeah, it'll shoot 8K technically.
You're missing out on the fact that it has a copper heat pipe in it.
That's something that's been more and more common.
Man.
I just love the look of it. It looks like Supreme Leader Snoke's phone. It's just so wonderful to look at.
Either that or it's going to transform and kill you in your sleep because clearly it's a Decepticon.
Oh,
well, I just like the idea. So you're making your 8K video with your perfectly flat little 1 millimeter thick lens, trying to make some sort of video out of it while the Jedis are trying to kill you. I think it's wonderful.
What I love, and so I have there's absolutely nothing wrong with my phone. There's nothing wrong with the camera that's in my phone. The only thing that's wrong with it is that the glass that's on the front of the phone over a period of 2 years either gets scratched or faded or whatever, which has happened with every single phone I've ever owned, because I don't put stuff in, the monster cases and stuff like that. And so it ends up becoming terrible. I take terrible photos now with it because of the phone, not because I'm a bad photographer. And so what I love is the idea is that this phone is going to, one little scratch is just going to make everything about it completely useless, supposedly. You'll have to just be able to, just make phone calls off of it. It'd be terrible.
Yeah, no, I would never make phone calls off an AK phone.
So what you're saying is you all have it on pre-order.
Yes. Well, we're asking for a review copy. No, totally.
Sure, blame the phone, Zach. Blame the phone.
I actually would thoroughly enjoy just to get a copy of this and just review on how well it makes phone calls and sends text messages.
There you go.
Just piss the hell out, which is why we never get a copy of this sort of thing, because I would totally do that. But
yeah, it's like, all right, guys, listen, I got the red, whatever this thing is called. What is it?
The Nubia Red Magic 3.
Listen, guys, I got the Red Magic 3. Let's do an unboxing and check it out. Full review. All right, this thing makes phone calls. Wow, great phone quality. All right, that's my review, guys. 8K video. You're not going to see it. Not going to show it to you.
Clear.
Yeah.
I actually don't have cell phone reception where I live. I use Wi-Fi. I just ordered a pizza. We'll see how quick it gets, and then I'll get right back.
It comes in 30 minutes.
Like, subscribe, and share.
But, again, 8K is inevitable. It's going to be, it's obviously, phone manufacturers need every benchmark they can get to help sell you a phone. We'll see 8K probably in Samsung phones here, and then eventually in the iPhones. So I'll be curious to know if it goes beyond 8K. Are we going to continue pushing this thing beyond? Because again, 8K doesn't have any adoption barely whatsoever. People are just getting comfortable with 4K. I don't see.
How many networks are broadcasting 4K? How many people actually own a 4K? It's just like we haven't ingrained. It just seems it's going way fast. And granted, there's some things that'll be cool out of 8K, being able to pull stills and kind of stuff like that. But it seems like the technology is going faster than the adoption, so it's just kind of like,
Well, you know what I watched recently in 6K? Marvel's Avengers Endgame on IMAX. They had that in 6K. That was pretty awesome.
House.
Yeah,
it was an awesome experience.
Cinemas, which are amazing.
Yeah.
But
did everybody see Endgame? Have we all seen Endgame?
Yeah.
I was washing my hair that day.
Man, you haven't seen it yet?
I'm not a big superhero guy.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a superhero to me.
It reminds me too much of my own life. You know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
I do. Yeah, it's the costumes.
Here's the biggest problem with all of these, with the high video and this sort of thing, when again, talking about the fact that, people aren't able, these sites don't process, even 1080p for the most part. Even the, HD that we're seeing on YouTube or whatever when it's on our phones, especially on mobile networks, isn't any decent quality. We very rarely can stream, an actual HD video file or high-res photo. It's because our networks are absolutely atrocious in this country.
So speaking of, now we're talking about high definition and streaming and all that, the lack of. What about Game of Thrones, the dark episode? Thoughts and feelings on that in compression? Did anyone watch it? Was it too dark for you? Because it was certainly too dark for me. And I have a 4K, and I have it just I sat there going, I can't see a shit. Stuff. Keep it family. I can't see anything.
I've already sworn once. We're past the.
We're way past it. Yeah.
I didn't mind it. I thought it was shot the way it was supposed to be shot, and it was dark for a reason. And it's supposed to emulate that feeling that the soldiers had on the battlefield, not being able to see their enemy and stuff like that. So, it was at night. I don't know, it wasn't a daytime battle. So, I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's a great way to save millions of dollars. That's anytime I see fog, like there's a battle scene and there's like fog off in the distance or mist, and I'm like, they just saved $500,000 on that shot by adding fog to it because you can lower the resolution of whatever CG is happening there. No, I don't know. I've just seen screenshots of it.
I think part of the problem is that the technology.
I was at.
So. Part of the technology is some people are watching it with better cable compression, and like you may have been watching it where it was properly compressed. Well, I was watching it and it was terrible.
The worst thing that came out, like honestly, the cinematographer actually.
I saw him came back. He's like, it's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Well, no, and he says it's like, oh, it's the fans' fault for not having their TVs done right. And it's just like, this ends up being another one of the, I mean, this is like this could be like a show topic, honestly, to talk about like film and documentaries or whatever. But like you have people continually like Chris Nolan talking about, oh, you should only see it in film, Dunkirk. Yeah. And it was just like, I would love to see it in film. I live in Syracuse, New York. The closest theater that was playing a film copy was in New York City. Am I going to drive 5.5 hours to go see Dunkirk?
All the films are switched over to digital projectors. They hardly send out film to theaters.
Yes, I mean, and it's just like I would love to, and every person in the country would love to have, high res, great screens and everywhere and see things on film. But you know what? Still, our country is very rural with a large population.
So I will have to wait till it comes out on Blu-ray or Netflix streams it in 4K to see if I enjoyed that episode.
You can bump up the thing. I mean, well, the other thing too is if you don't warn your. I'm trying to remember what TV show I saw where it's just like there was like you should bump up your brightness or something like that.
Yes, I remember that. It was a while ago.
Is that they should that they need to like they need to do this sort of thing, and if they don't know that they're going to do this, but I mean I wouldn't from screenshots in the video. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't. I'm like 4 seasons behind.
Although in the last episode they left a coffee cup in the episode, and there's a Starbucks coffee cup, which is wonderful.
I love it. I love it. But the big thing is that I just they need to put in a warning. It's just they need to also realize. I mean, this is something that I think that all camera people and directors and everything like that need to realize is that like, okay, so 90% of people are watching these things on iPads or this $200 1080p TV that's 32 inches, whatever.
They certainly know how to shoot safe for TV and lines and grids and all that kind of stuff. They should know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize for that, and so that to me was the biggest disappointment when the
all I know is when I went from that to watching the big battle scene in Endgame, and I'm like, this is the way it should have looked.
Yeah, well, spend another $100 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Totally work like that. Yeah. So yeah.
I guarantee they're gonna erase that coffee cup in the next chance they get to release that because it's like
they're gonna George Lucas then.
I just love that there was instantly I was looking on Reddit and somebody found a photo of Sophie, the redhead, standing outside the set that day with holding on to a Starbucks coffee cup that looked exactly like that. They were like, she left it on.
They'll somehow be able to roll it into the mythology of the universe. Like that is that's a Zora High coffee cup, and it's designed to bring light to the region, and it's there for the Night King. It's the Night King's coffee cup, so it'll bring peace to the land.
Caffeine.
Those are words that I don't know.
It's the Lord of Caffeine.
All right, well, this is going to bring us to this week's show, this end of this week's show. BA, obviously, you've already plugged the, your art exhibit and your book, and I hope everyone goes out to Tucson, right, Arizona?
I live to serve Tucson, Arizona.
Or buy the book. But is there anything else you'd like to plug or promote before we sign off tonight?
Yes, actually, comicbook.com.
Oh, that's great.
Drink, everybody.
It's my favorite website. I especially love the new article they have coming out about the coffee cup in Game of Thrones and how in the DVD it's going to be played by Hayden Christensen.
And the cover of Detective Pikachu was unbelievable. Pulitzer Prize winning.
Something. Yeah, it's art, honestly. It's just Italian chef kiss. Mwah.
I hear Zach is going to write a listicle about the 10 cutest Pokemon. That's his name.
Pikachu. That's it. That's all I know. Right. I don't do my due diligence and research before I do these red carpets. But seriously, when can do you know when people can pre-order or book?
A month ago today.
A month ago.
Yeah. 2 months ago. All the time.
All the time. Where can people pre-order it? On Amazon?
Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. There's a bunch of others. If you actually just Google my name, Google has actually put in a link to go buy the book with a picture of me on the side of the thing. So I had nothing to do with it. And
can we just put Post-it notes on your door with cash?
Yeah, absolutely. You usually do, Zach, just not the
Well, that's for something else. But
it's too bad they can't go to comicbook.com to buy your book. That would be a great place to go, since they're already there for Pokemon information.
Circling the drainage hole now.
I'm looking forward to the bang-up book review on comicbook.com. I'm not going to lie.
Heck yeah.
Get them to cover a book of photography on poets. So I don't think that our readers know what poetry is. So.
Travis, you got anything for us before we sign off?
Some crazy Megatron.
I think it's Dave.
I think Dave.
We just have like Dave's frozen sort of ogre like face just staring at
a wonderful smile, frozen in robot voice. So.
Travis, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can get you now.
All right. So, anything you want to throw out before we sign off?
I want to thank Timothy Floyd, our listener and donator, for coming up to me at the Palm Springs Photo Festival. It was awesome to talk with him, and keep watching. And as always, check us out and ask us questions and let us know what you want to know. And if you want to follow up on anything that we've discussed today, let us know.
Yep.
And
all right, Zach.
Subscribe and share. No, sorry, I was doing my YouTube personality voice.
Oh, nice. Hey, everybody, smash that like button, hit the bell, like, comment, subscribe, and go to our Patreon page and throw us a bone or two. Come on, man. All right.
Also, the moon landing is a fake.
Indeed. All right, well, I want to thank our guest, B.A. Van Sise, for being on the show this evening. Thank you so much, B.A. Truly appreciated you and your wonderful stories. For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 173, and we are out.